Hi babies! As you can see, I'm still in the Medibay, as I'm still suffering from my broken ribs. And oh boy, am I suffering. But I wanted to get out of bed to discuss whether or not you need gender dysphoria to transition, or at least to be trans. Now, as disclosure, when I first transitioned, I didn't have dysphoria, but the way I transitioned wasn't exactly the healthiest way, mental-wise. I did it to punish myself for my past. I just used to be a toxic guy. I used to be a really, really bad guy. I became broken after quite an epiphany, and isolated myself for years and became addicted to drugs. Due to my drug abuse, I developed schizophrenia. My schizophrenia wanted me to transition. It saw it as a kind of road to redemption, to cleanse my past sins, to sort of punish myself. I know that sounds. I know how loony that sounds. But funnily enough, it worked out for me. I like to think transitioning made me a much better person, a kinder person. I have human feelings now. I developed empathy, and I like being good to people. I like helping people. I like caring for people, and I'm happier. I'm a happier person inside and out for it. I'm also on antipsychotics now for my schizophrenia. However, I'm still carrying on my transition because it turned out to be good for me. Now, I wouldn't really recommend. I really wouldn't recommend my path to other people, but I'm just telling you this as an example that I didn't have dysphoria when I first transitioned. However, don't let my voice fool you. I don't know how to voice train. I followed the guides, and I can't do it. I just don't know how to do it. I've tried. It doesn't work for me. I need a voice coach. Unfortunately, the GIC waiting list is 4 years, which is why I have to DIY the hormones. But it'll be 4 years before I get a voice coach on the GIC, unless I go private, which I can't afford. I can't afford to pay for a voice coach. So don't let my voice fool you. This is me in real life right now. You see, I am on hormones. I'm transitioning. I am trans. I'm not bullshitting you. But what about other people? Do you need gender dysphoria to be trans? The short answer is no. No. You don't. You don't need dysphoria to be trans. Gatekeeping the trans label this way brings a lot of problems with it. Now, I sympathise with people who do have dysphoria and they have to transition for medical reasons. I do have empathy and sympathy for their situation, and I understand a lot of their opinions and viewpoints come from a place of fear and insecurity. I understand that. So before I go any further, I just want to say, I'm not against trans meds. I don't think they're nasty, evil people or anything like that. I sympathise with their situation and their fears. Okay, they're scared that their access to hormones is going to be taken away if they don't gatekeep it. But that's actually counterintuitive. In actual fact, gatekeeping is risking you losing access to your medical needs. You see, transmedicalism brings some unusual allies, aka the gender critical movement. who piggyback on transmed views. You can only transition with a diagnosis of dysphoria. Well, okay. Well, what if somebody out there is watching and you have dysphoria? What if you went to your doctor? I have dysphoria. I need access to hormones to transition to ease my dysphoria. And the doctor doesn't believe that you have dysphoria. The psychologist doesn't believe you have dysphoria. Or perhaps you get a gender critical psychologist or a gender critical doctor. Thanks to your gatekeeping, now you've lost access to the hormones you need. And not everywhere has free healthcare. What about people in countries who can't afford access to medical transition? Are they not trans because they cannot transition? Or what about people in countries where it's illegal to transition? Or they'd be killed for it? Are they not real trans people because they can't get a gender dysphoria diagnosis? And that's the problem with saying you need a diagnosis of dysphoria, or you need your dysphoria validated or made official to be trans. It affects people with dysphoria as well as people who do not have dysphoria. There may be non-binary people out there who are actually they don't suffer from their bodies. They may be okay with their bodies, but they still feel like they're a different gender in mind. They don't feel any pain about their physical self, but they still express their gender in other ways. Are they not trans? Now again, I have sympathy for people out there who are suffering and feel pain and discomfort. And I wish you luck in your transition and hope your pain eases in time as your body aligns more with your gender or correct sex. But personally, I don't like the idea of making suffering intrinsic to trans identity. Being trans isn't about suffering. Being trans isn't a bad thing. I don't think a person's gender identity should be dependent on trauma and pain and darkness. I quite like being trans. Do I wish I was born a girl? Of course, I wish I was born a girl. I wasn't. It is what it is. That's why I'm transitioning. I quite like being trans. I don't suffer pain or discomfort. I don't think being trans is about suffering. I like who I am. I'm having fun. It's a whole new world to explore. I'm quite enjoying. I'm enjoying myself. I quite enjoy my new life. That's being trans to me. Linking being trans strictly to a gender dysphoria diagnosis, it takes us back to a world where people can claim they can tell you who you are, what you are. You have to have a piece of paper to say who you are, what you are. Do you think that's right? Do you think there should be government officials telling you your own identity? Or do you think you, yourself, should have that bodily and mentally autonomy? Do you not think that you should tell the world who you are and what you are, and not a piece of paper with a stamp on it and a doctor's signature and a government logo? This is why trans healthcare is so terrible in my country. In my country, to be considered trans, you still need an official diagnosis of transsexualism, or aka dysphoria. And then only then, once you have this diagnosis, are you allowed access to healthcare. Look at me, I'm DIYing. I'm buying hormones off the internet. Is that what you want for trans people? Again, what if you have dysphoria and they decide, oh, you're not dysphoric enough, so you're denied access to healthcare. Now you have to DIY. Now you have to inject bathtub estrogen. Is that right? And this is why gatekeeping is completely counterintuitive. It actually blocks trans people out. It doesn't protect your access. It puts your access at risk. All you need to be trans is to feel a mismatch between your born sex and your gender identity. You don't even have to medically transition. But if you want to medically transition, that should be your right. That's your right. It's your body. You know who you are. You know what you are. You know what you need. Women are allowed access to gender affirming care without an official diagnosis for their breast augmentations and butt lifts and facelifts. Men are allowed access to gender affirming healthcare without any official diagnosis. Hair transplants, penis enlargements, whatever. But cis people don't think about that. But if you were born in a male body and you want more feminine features, and want to go on female sex hormones, suddenly you need documentation. Suddenly you need a team of doctors and a psychologist and a government official and the personal approval of every right-wing conservative in the world for some reason. Does that sound right? Because that's the kind of world you're advocating when you're gatekeeping and saying you need dysphoria to be trans. Trans people, whether you have dysphoria or not, you deserve access to gender affirming support and healthcare as and when you want it and feel you need it, not as and when according to arbitrary criteria put in place by people, biased people with various agendas. We shouldn't be at the mercy of civil servants and lawmakers and medical councils. And for trans medicalists, all I can say is, you know how it feels to be hated for who you are. You know what transphobia feels like. You know what it's like to be gatekeeped from who you are. You've been misgendered by bigots on the internet, or perhaps even in real life. So why do it to other trans people? Why pass on that hate? But we only get hate because of the too cutes. No. You get hate because you're trans. Haters are gonna hate. And throwing other trans people under the bus isn't going to save you from hate. It's just going to shrink your numbers and help you get squashed better and help them gatekeep you more and bring in more laws and more criterias until they finally squeeze you out and remove your access completely. They aren't going to stop. You can't compromise with bigots who want you dead. They don't care if you have dysphoria or not. In fact, most right-wing bigots, they don't even believe dysphoria is real. So how can you think that gatekeeping access to medical care for those with dysphoria will save you? It won't. You don't need dysphoria to be trans. We don't need to be put into separate camps. The umbrella is there to protect us all. And with that said, I think a picture will paint 1,000 words. So I will leave you with this, my babies. Zippity.